Hello, grade 11. Today we're going to look at persuasive techniques, Unit 1, Declaration of Independence. So persuasive techniques, writers use them a lot, and you also use them in your writing as well in the past. The writers use them to help convince readers to agree with their position. So common persuasive techniques include appeal to logic, persuasion that shows an argument is well reasoned. You show evidence, proof to prove your point. Appeal to authority is persuasion that shows that a high power or a highly respected individual supports the same position. So they might use this in commercials, advertisements. They use famous people, politicians, people that the public knows. Appeal to emotion, persuasion that uses words, images, ideas, or charged language, which is strong words with powerful connotation meanings, to appeal to the feelings of the reader. So now, let's look at another PowerPoint slides. So when we look at the persuasion, just check your prior knowledge. Persuasive writing is shaped by author's purpose, audience, and context. And how do you explain persuasion in a simple language? So think about this question. And the factors that influence writer's purpose. What is the purpose? To persuade his audience, to share his views. Context, high school, 2018. Who is the audience? His high school mates. And the persuasion comes. So what is a persuasive technique? Writers use persuasive techniques to help convince readers about an issue. Such techniques include emotional appeals, so statements intended to stir up strong feelings. Let's look at this Jane Goodall. She's an animal activist. What she said about the chimpanzees. Young chimpanzees in similar tiny prisons, rocked back and forth or from side to side, far gone in misery and despair. So emotional appeals can be an important element of an effective argument. However, writers sometimes exaggerate problems or use appeals to pity to cover up logical fallacies or flawed reasoning, like false reasoning. So example of emotional appeals, read this aloud and you will understand how effective the words are. Millions of pounds of recyclable materials get dumped in landfills each year, thanks to lazy people or careless municipalities that don't bother recycling. Emotional appeals are one technique used by persuasive writers, and point out that the following words in this text appeal to emotions: dump, lazy, careless, and bother. So it triggers some emotions in the reader. So emotional appeals, they often include sensory language to create vivid imagery and loaded words to create these type of feelings: fear, pity, or guilt. And when we look at some examples, emotional appeals, for example, words like abandoned, hungry, frightened. Your donation can help find homes for these puppies. Ethical appeal: if you believe in education, vote against cutting after school programs. So this basically taps into our values or moral standards. What is the difference between an argument and the persuasion? Argument means purpose to document objectively to prove a point. You have to show evidence and prove some documentation. Persuasion means like purpose to shake up readers and motivates them to act. So they have to take an action to solve the problem or the issue. So the two are usually combined because some people respond rationally, logically, and emotionally. These words, these appeal words, emotion, logic, etc., they come from Greek words ethos, pathos, logos. Let's look at these one by one. So basically, ethos means, Greek word means character. In commercials, they use famous people because they are reliable characters. So if your audience see you or your argument as credible and trustworthy, it will be much easier to persuade them. Here, David Beckham's wearing a Rolex. So people say, oh, okay, so it's a reliable brand to buy. And the next one, pathos, suffering or experience. It means appeals to emotions. It evokes an emotional response in the audience or reader. So here there's this advertisement. She has the power to change your world. You have the power to help her do it. So basically, when people ask for donations, they use these kind of advertisements. And logos means reason or a word. So it's an appeal to reason and logic, and it's to persuade the audience by logical thought, fact, and rationally. For example, you give examples. Over 80% of students surveyed said they would perform better in school if they were able to, for example, given more time, let's say. So basically, ethos is credibility, like a character, famous character you can use in your speeches or in your writing. Pathos, emotions, logos, logic. So now let's look at some videos from commercials, and then you will understand better like how these three ethos, logos, pathos work.
More dentists have recommended Colgate Sensitive Pro Relief toothpaste.
It works instantly and the results last.
I've seen the results. It's more effective.
Here's how it works. Colgate Sensitive Pro Relief tackles the root cause of sensitivity by blocking the open channels that lead to the tooth center. Colgate Sensitive Pro Relief, it gives better results.
Colgate Sensitive Pro Relief. Instant relief and long-lasting protection. Colgate, #1 brand recommended by dentists.
When your cable company keeps you on hold, you get angry. When you get angry, you go blow off steam. When you go blow off steam, accidents happen. When accidents happen, you get an eye patch. When you get an eye patch, people think you're tough. When people think you're tough, people want to see how tough. And when people want to see how tough, you wake up in a roadside ditch. Don't wake up in a roadside ditch. Get rid of cable and upgrade to DirecTV. Call 1-800-DirecTV.
Who's got the juice? Got it. Got it. Don't got it. Got it. Got it. Don't got it. Yeah. Got it. Ain't got it. You got the juice. Right. You got the juice. Yeah. You got it. Got it. Got it. Got it. Don't got it. Taste the real juice. Either you got it or you don't. Right. Either you got it or you don't. Right.
So, all these seem the same.
Get a Sony. The technology in their cameras and camcorders makes it easy to get the best shot.
Exactly.
What do you know about cameras and camcorders?
Really? Does that child have a beard?
Get one real quick, me and you.
It's easy to get the best shot with Sony cameras and camcorders.
I give them food. Not directly, but through the money. I heal them. Today, I am in charge of picking a great new healthcare plan, right? That's what this is all about. Does that make me their doctor? Yes, in a way. Yeah, like a specialist.
For every dog that gets adopted, there's one that doesn't. So when you buy Pedigree, we make a donation to help dogs like Echo find loving homes. The Pedigree Adoption Drive. Help us help dogs.
If this is how your child feels after losing you for a minute, just imagine if they lost you for life.
Okay, so after these commercials, we'll do some exercises. But meanwhile, what you can do, you can go back to the definition of these argumentation persuasive techniques, and then try to identify in the videos, in each video, which technique they use, which one was it? Was it appeals to logic, appeals to authority, or appeals to emotions? So let's look at some examples. It says read each item below, then write either its logic, authority, or emotion. The case for diversity cites a study by a Nobel Prize-winning scientist that shows when diversity is introduced in a group, the entire group benefits, not just minority individuals. So here, by saying this, Nobel Prize-winning scientist, it gives us the authority. So that means it's a credible person, trustworthy. Number two, do you really want to spend your time with a bunch of bigots and extremists who are afraid of people who don't look like them? So these words like that they use shows us that it's appeal to emotions. Diversity makes sense when you think about it. How do people learn? Not by encountering the same old thing over and over again, but by encountering new things. And diversity introduces new things and new people into your environment. So here, it tells us logic. If this continues, this text, that means they will give some evidence and proof. On the other page, again, we will put logic, authority, or emotion. In the 1960s, the American medical establishment began touting fat as the culprit for cardiovascular disease and obesity. This policy was wrong-headed, reckless, and based on shoddy, discredited studies that foolishly link fat consumption with obesity. So here, this is emotions, because although it says 1960s, the words they use is very related to the people's emotions. It triggers these emotions. Number two, nevertheless, Americans began cutting down on their fat consumption for the next 40 years. Eating low-fat foods resulted in an epidemic of obesity and its associated diseases. The data are clear. As fat consumption decreased, more and more Americans became overweight. So number two is logic, because it gives you some facts, evidence. Number three, finally, authors such as Gary Taubes began looking into the fat is bad literature. Taubes found that the original advice to avoid fat was faulty. He found no clear evidence to link fat consumption with obesity. And this is authority. It's because the author Gary Taubes, they use his name. Then data began pouring in that carbohydrates, sugars, and starches contribute to obesity and all of its attendant problems. Americans were getting heavier because they were eating too much junk food, but the junky part of as a fast food hamburger, for example, was not the fat in the burger, but the carbs in the bun. So number four is the logic. Again, it's giving some logical examples. Number five, it makes me sick to think how long it took to make changes. Recently, America's dietary establishment has been changing its tune and suggesting that fats are okay to consume, finally. And this one is emotions, because it's like personal thoughts. They try to trigger some emotions in us. So here, what you can do, you can go back to the commercials you watch, identify the types of appeals, and then you can solve this worksheet on Pearson classes. So I will see you next time in a different video. Thank you. Bye-bye.